All right, let's just jump right into it. Today's explainer covers what is honestly one of the most chilling, calculated crimes we've seen come out of Maharashtra in recent years. We are looking at a 2023 true crime case that completely blindsided the local police department and really shocked the entire nation. It's one of those stories that proves the absolute darkest secrets can hide right behind the most innocent-looking smiles. And honestly, it kind of fundamentally challenges everything we think we know about family and trust.
I mean, really think about this for a second. How does a daughter poison her own father and then just get away with it for 3 whole years? It literally sounds like the plot of some dark psychological thriller, right? But no, this is 100% reality. Today we're going to break down the anatomy of this betrayal step by step to figure out how what looked like a completely natural tragedy was actually a meticulously executed murder hiding right in plain sight.
So, let's go back to the morning of April 25, 2023. You have Jayant Balalwar. He's 45, a super dedicated head constable stationed at the Chandrapur City Police Station. He wakes up, does his morning prayers, gets ready for work, just a totally normal day. His 19-year-old daughter, Arya, lovingly prepares a milkshake for his breakfast. He drinks it, heads out to his post at the collectorate's administrative building, but shortly after arriving, Jayant collapses. They rush him to the government medical college and hospital, but despite their best efforts, he passes away.
Now, you know what makes this so incredibly disturbing? It's how flawlessly this crime just blended into everyday life. The initial post-mortem report came back, showing absolutely zero signs of foul play. Nothing. To the doctors, to the entire police department, and to the grieving family, which included a seemingly devastated Arya, by the way, this was just a sudden, tragic medical event. The family held a peaceful funeral, completely and totally unaware that a murderer was literally weeping right alongside them.
3 entire years. That's how long the truth stayed completely buried. Just let that sink in. During this massive gap of time, the perpetrators walked entirely free. Not a single shadow of suspicion was cast upon them. 3 years of just absolute silence.
And during that huge chunk of time, Arya didn't just move on. She absolutely thrived. Because Jayant died while in service, the police department actually expedited the process to give Arya his job on compassionate grounds. Just 1 month after her dad's death, she marries her boyfriend Ashish. She builds this incredibly glamorous Instagram facade, traveling, partying, boldly flexing Maharashtra police in her bio, and even keeping her father's name as her middle name for show. By 2025, she had actually successfully started her official police training.
So tracing the timeline, Arya's life was on this perfect upward trajectory, from the sudden tragedy in April 2023 through her big social media rebrand in October, all the way to nailing her police training in 2025. In her mind, she had won. She had totally beaten the system. That is, until March 2026, when a sudden, explosive confession just shattered that entire illusion overnight. Out of nowhere in March 2026, a man walks into the Ramnagara police station and just drops an absolute bombshell. He confesses to the officers that the milkshake Jayant drank 3 years prior wasn't some harmless breakfast. It was laced with poison by his own daughter. And the guy confessing? It was Ashish, Arya's own husband.
Okay, so you are probably asking yourself the exact same thing I was. Why? Why on earth would she do this? Well, the sources point to a really deadly cocktail of motives. First off, Jayant had noticed some behavioral changes in Arya. Being a protective cop, he placed strict restrictions on her when he found out she was secretly meeting up with Ashish. Arya, who was apparently used to getting her way her whole life, was just blinded by this intense anger over being controlled. And the second motive? A cold, calculating greed. She knew that if her father died on duty, she would inherit his police position on compassionate grounds, which is honestly a twisted strategy she picked up because Ashish himself had secured his police job the exact same way.
So how exactly does a 19-year-old girl and her boyfriend actually pull something like this off? It's chillingly simple. Arya was the mastermind, sure, but Ashish handled the logistics. He needed a poison that would closely mimic a natural illness so they wouldn't get caught. So what does he do? He reaches out to his 13-year-old cousin in Bhadravati. Yes, a 13-year-old. This kid, despite being a minor, had connections to some pretty unsavory characters, and he ends up connecting Ashish with a criminal named Monty. Monty then supplies the exact deadly toxin they needed for a mere 5,000 rupees.
Now, you might be wondering how in the world did the initial autopsy completely miss this? Well, the source material points out a fairly massive police error here.
The initial post-mortem didn't detect the poison, which isn't crazy, but standard protocol requires viscera samples to be sent off for advanced forensic testing. If those samples had been collected and tested properly and on time, traces of the poison would almost certainly have been found. But because those samples were mishandled and delayed, the specific toxin went completely undetected, giving Arya 3 full years of unearned freedom.
But it was actually this totally unearned freedom that ended up unraveling the whole thing. By late 2025, Arya and Ashish's realities couldn't have been more different. Arya was thriving. She's finishing her training, living her absolute best life. But Ashish, he had been fired from the police force during his probation period for indiscipline and misconduct. As Arya kept succeeding, her attitude toward Ashish completely changed. He started to feel used, discarded, and entirely abandoned by the very woman he had helped commit murder for.
Eventually, all that tension just boiled right over during this massive argument. Arya threw some really harsh words at Ashish, making it crystal clear that she just no longer valued him at all. And that was it. That was his breaking point. You see, Ashish's confession to the police wasn't born out of a heavy conscience or some sudden overwhelming guilt. Not at all. It was born out of a totally shattered ego, severe rejection, and a burning desire for revenge. His mindset went entirely destructive. Basically, if I'm going down, you're going down with me.
Once Ashish made that confession, the fallout was swift and absolute. On March 28, 2026, the entire network was completely dismantled. Arya, the mastermind and executioner, arrested. Ashish, the co-conspirator, arrested. Monty, the poison supplier, was taken into custody. And that 13-year-old cousin who acted as the middleman was sent straight to juvenile custody. It was the quote-unquote perfect crime, entirely undone by the very toxicity that created it in the first place.
To really wrap our heads around this tragedy, we need to look past just the surface events and dig into the psychology of the crime a bit. This is a textbook yet incredibly disturbing case of patricide, which is the act of murdering one's own father. Now, often patricide is the tragic result of long-term severe abuse, where the victim genuinely feels their survival is threatened. But the sources make it crystal clear that was absolutely not the case here. This was driven entirely by extreme greed, a demand for control, and some very severe psychological distortion.
And that actually brings us to this psychological concept called moral disengagement. I mean, how do you hand your own dad a poison milkshake and just watch him drink it? You do it through moral disengagement. It's a psychological process where a person intentionally justifies a horrific act so they don't have to feel the guilt. Because Arya had been raised with constant instant gratification, the second her father restricted her, she felt like her core independence was under attack. Combine that with the financial opportunity of snagging his job, and she managed to justify the murder in her own mind as a necessary, totally logical step for her future.
Building right off of that, we also see some really profound cognitive distortion at play here. In Arya's severely flawed mindset, Jayant literally ceased to be her loving father. Her empathy was just completely switched off. He was reduced from a living, breathing human being into a mere obstacle, just a roadblock standing between her and the life she wanted with Ashish and that government job she coveted. When you strip away a person's humanity in your own mind like that, eliminating them becomes terrifyingly easy.
So what does this all mean? It brings us to the absolute, terrifying core of this tragedy. When unchecked desires, weak emotional regulation, and dark opportunities all collide at once, what terrible realities get unleashed? The milkshake murder is a harsh reminder that the line between a loving, safe home and a crime scene is sometimes agonizingly thin, protected by nothing more than the fragile constraints of human empathy. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I'm going to leave you to ponder just how well we truly know the people closest to us.